Welcome back to Esther Alexis, Body of an Extrovert. Okay, so welcome back to Esther Alexis, Body of an Extrovert. Today I am so excited to have a well-known Insta artist inspired by Tyler. Her real name is Tyler Clark. Is that okay that I say that?
Yeah, that's fine.
And what I really wanted to talk about today was just artistry, muses, faith, and really what's going on in the world. So Tyler, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hey, everybody, my name is Tyler with Inspired by Tyler, and I am a Christian 3D mixed media hair artist. So, I paint paintings and I add real materials to them, such as hair, fabric, and jewelry, really to help my art come alive. I'm really big on sharing my faith walk as it connects to my art because art has been very therapeutic for me. So, as I'm healing, I'm able to really portray that in my art, and it actually brings healing to other people too because they're able to see my faith walk, and it encourages and inspires them to do the same.
That was like a beautiful introduction if I've ever heard one.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so first and foremost, like what inspired you to get into art? Like when did you start? And was it like a professional study or was it something that you were just passionate about?
Yeah, so I really always loved art. When I was little, I loved to color. And I also loved to do hair. I was always very intrigued. And I just remember like I had a babysitter and she used to braid hair. And I just was so determined for her to teach me how to do French braids. And so I've always had a passion for both, but I actually studied math and mechanical engineering in school. So I really didn't take art courses much, past junior high school because the curriculum was so rigorous. And so art really became something that was therapeutic for me. So when I went to Spelman and Georgia Tech, and once I got to Georgia Tech for the engineering part of the program, I was really stressed. I was unhappy, and I needed an outlet because I wasn't performing very well there. I was just in an environment that was not best for my well-being, and so I turned to art. And so this was when I realized that I loved it and that other people loved it too, and that I could do something more with it. But art for me has always started as therapy, and I'm not a trained artist. All of this is something that I've been blessed with, and that there have been very important people that have come into my life to help me learn art in not so traditional way.
Wow, I think that many people can agree with like having gone into something that they weren't necessarily, I don't know, passionate about. Because you have no idea who I am, so I'll tell you. So I actually double majored in accounting and business administration, but it's more so I think because people tell you growing up, like you want something that is secure, like you want to have a livelihood in a profession that will never fail you. Can I tell you that I am so bad at math? I still use my fingers to subtract things. Like I have a full accounting degree. Like it's so bad. If anyone lets me near anything mathematical, it will be a disaster. I've always said this. And so I feel as though even this podcast was born out of a place of just needing an outlet, needing somewhere where I was not being crushed, like spiritually, just as a person, as a being. So I think that many people can relate to kind of being in these spaces that aren't conducive to like your personal growth, and having maybe a muse just squeeze out of that, whether it be writing, artistry, talking. um, so that's definitely something incredible. Can I ask, um, for your people that came into your life that influenced you, are they people that, do art professionally? And I ask because your art is so beautiful and it's so well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I have a few Chicago. So I'm from Chicago. So I have a few mentors here. One is Dana Todd Pope, and she's really well known for paintings of children. And she actually connected me to my mentor, Minnie Watkins, who literally spent so much time teaching me how to see art differently. Because when I first met her about a year and a half ago, I couldn't really see shadows and contours and how to build dimension in a painting. And she helped me. And that was just so critical because she sat with me and she physically walked me through it. Like, I'm the type, like, I don't really learn the best on my own, but I learn the best when I have someone there to like help guide me. And so, yeah, she's an artist and she really helped elevate me.
That's awesome. So then it's safe to say then that you had sort of support on the sidelines. And I say
Mhm.
that because a lot of people, particularly a friend of mine who I was talking to, but yesterday night, doesn't God work in mysterious ways, was talking about just not having support in her dreams and how that's impacted how she now moves in life. And so, would you say that you've always had support in this? I
Um,
guess.
well, yeah, I mean, I feel like I've always had support in my life. But I didn't always have like a art mentor type of a support. And so the thing is, sometimes we may not feel supported because the people in our lives don't have the skill set to support us in the way that we need. And so, I mean that to say that like some people just don't have the expertise and they don't understand what it takes to truly help somebody get to that next level. Right. And so that's why we need to get aligned with people that understand and that can really help support us in that next direction. So for me, I took a leap of faith and literally Dana, she invited me to come to Miami a year and a half ago for Art Basel so that I could just, get exposure, get my networking together. Mind you, me and Dana, we were cool, but we weren't like super, super close. So I was really shocked when she even extended it to me. So I was going to go stay with her, but then it ended up being a situation where I couldn't anymore. And so she was like, well, you could stay with Minnie. Like Minnie is super cool. Like you could stay with her. And I'm like, okay. This was a faith walk for me because I was like, you know what, God, if this is what you have for me, then just I'm gonna go and we'll see what happens. So that's how I ended up meeting Minnie on a leap of faith. It wasn't like she just like came to my life in a way that didn't require me to risk my comfort zone. So sometimes that help comes in unusual ways. But it was such a true blessing to me. Like one of the first major conversations I had with Minnie in Miami was that she wanted to help me as much as she possibly could and get me as far as she could. And that was a God ordained situation because I didn't do anything really worthy of that type of love, but God put that on her heart. So sometimes the people that love us, and have loved us our whole lives aren't the people that will help elevate us in the same exact way.
Wow, that was well said. And I feel like you're talking about faith a lot. Also, a woman of faith, girl. Don't be, I'll preach up here, but um, but a lot of people don't go hand in hand when it comes to like their passion, their pursuit of things, and their faith. And so, like, how did that even come about for you? Because if I'm being sincere with you, this podcast I think was born of my own faith, of me just saying, you know what, this is something that I have to do. I feel like I want people to be inspired by others, to have conversations with others, even if it's me being used as a medium in that sense. But I didn't necessarily think it was my God ordained purpose until I came to the end of my rope with like where I could be, where I found that I fit in. And it wasn't until I was like, you know what, God, if it's going to work out, it's going to work out. I'm going to reach out to people. I'm going to ask them to come on. And if they come on, they do. And if they come on, they don't. You being an example. And I was like, and from there, we're going to go. But I feel as though it's kind of hard to put passion and faith together for a lot of people. Like those are two very separate parts of their lives. So
Mhm.
how do you advise that someone kind of bridge the gap between those two things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I struggled with this as well. I wasn't always putting my faith out there publicly. I was actually uncomfortable doing that because my art actually has a tendency to go very viral. And when it
Mhm.
comes to this whole viral culture, right? Um, it's really easy to start living for that.
Yep.
And I got to a point where I didn't really want to share my true voice because I felt that I would lose my followers if I shared my faith. Or because sharing your faith is not mainstream culture.
It's not.
And
And girl, cancel culture be coming quick for the
right.
Christians.
And with that cancel culture, let me just stop and say this. I don't believe in that for my life because they don't have the authority. They did not anoint me and they will not exit me. So there's
Girl, if you don't preach up here, if you don't say it.
I mean, it's so essential for us to realize who anointed us, who gave us our platform, and who's going to fulfill that for us. Because this whole council culture I feel like that applies to people that aren't submitted to the Lord, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because for me, I know that the authority is null and void. Like, I'm going to say what I want to say. And God has built me up so much in the faith because, you know, my life is, I've just seen him work. And even on my bad days, it's like, God, I know you're so good. So I'm going to keep trying. And so the reason why it's important to blend, you know, passion and faith together is if you're a believer, then that is all we have. And if
Mm-hmm.
we're not connecting them together, then we're doing ourselves, our faith, you know, like anybody connected to our names a disservice. So, for example, if I don't share my faith, then I'm not bringing other people to salvation. And I know I have an assignment of doing that. And so once I connected those dots and stopped being afraid of how people would perceive me, then I started just doing me because I realized some of that mainstream culture stuff, that's not what saved me. That's not what's healed me. That's not what keeps me going day to day. And I realize there's people out here that are also just like me, struggling and need something bigger than what is normally coming on their timeline to help get them to that next stage. And so I ended up doing a time lapse video and putting a gospel song to it, and it went viral. So then it really came clear, like, oh, God, you're doing something to me because you're showing me that you could still go viral. And so now I'm making God go viral. Okay. So there, you know, there's still power in faith. And the thing is, some, you know, it may not be normal, but there's people that are supposed to stand out and be leaders and they can't follow like the normal trend.
Absolutely. Honestly, and if I'm being sincere, the only reason I even reached out to you, I remember I saw you on my Explore page, and this was, you know, we're in a time of turmoil right now in the U.S., especially when it comes to race tensions running so high. And if I'm being sincere with you, I was not in a good place, just in a place of dismal, like depression, and I was just sad. Like I felt like the state of the world was a very sad place, and usually I would consider myself a very optimistic person. Like it's what I preach. It's what I minister in my walk and in my talk is what I believe. And I was like, you know what? I just don't know if I can see beauty the way like I used to see it anymore, because it just seems that everywhere we go, we're being robbed of beauty as people of color, as women, as just so many things are just stacked against us. And then I kid you not, I had seen like your artwork. It was obviously beautiful. I was like, okay, so clearly I've got to see this, because this to me was Black joy. And I think that Black joy is truly the defiance of all oppression, of all, you know, spirits come upon us that are not sent by He, you know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so I literally saw, I think, your face in one of them, like a video, and I was like, that's odd. That's not artwork. That's a human being. So I clicked it, and you had put up this prayer up there, like like a online IGTV
Yeah.
prayer. And I
Wow.
kid you not, I was at work. Like I'm always, don't tell anyone it's too late now, but I'm always on Instagram, like
We
while
all
I'm
are, you know.
working. And like I literally stopped, closed my eyes, and let your like 5 to 6 minute prayer go on. Mind you, like my coworkers are writing me like, hello. And I was like, oh no, like I need this prayer. And it was talking about like the prayer of fear, like of you know, putting away fear and knowing that He didn't send us that spirit, especially when it comes to doing our God ordained assignments. And I
Wow.
was like, absolutely. Like, and I hadn't done anything on my podcast, on my blogs, on like my fan fiction and stuff in so long, because I was just like, I'm just so sad. Like, I don't even know what to say to these people. I don't know how to address these people. And your message, like, which to me felt like it was tailored for me, was just like,
Wow.
we didn't come here to please people. We didn't come here to tiptoe. Like, if we have a message, we need to say it. And I felt like God had been pushing me for so long to be like, this spirit of fear, like being afraid to even talk about Christ during this time, especially as a person of color, to talk about police brutality, just all these different topics that I was afraid I couldn't even touch upon, like
Mhm.
for alienating my audience. And then I heard your message and I was like, and we're putting up a Black Lives Matter video, and we're going to be talking about art and faith, and we're going to be like, I was like, it needs to happen. And I think that sometimes we don't know it, but we're called to inspire those around us, those who aren't even around us. That's also the good thing about social media,
Mhm.
um, to do their tasks. And I got to tell you, it was such a blessing for me. And that's why I reached out at all, because I was just like,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
art is one thing that means something to me, but faith, I think when you pair those two things together, it's just beautiful. And I think that when you talk about your faith walk through your art, like that's incredible to me. Like if you even want to further elaborate on that, because I think that a lot of people don't even know what it means to have a faith walk, to kind of go through something and make it to the other side.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm so glad that you shared that with me. So, if I just first say, like, I'm changing a lot, and God is making me someone who is really, really bold by faith to do things that is just not normal. And that prayer was one of those things. I've been in life coaching and therapy, and I've been being groomed in an expedited way over the past few months. And the Holy Spirit put it on my heart to do this prayer. And I was like resisting it for a little while because it was uncomfortable for me. It's like, who does this? I've never seen something quite like that on my timeline. So it's like, okay, and it just kept working on me and working on me. And, I feel like I'm in this constant state of like, at what time, at what point do I have the strength to do what the Lord has told me to do next? But now it's this point of being obedient. And so it's beautiful to hear that it has helped you, because I know that there's a need for our people, and I know the words that the Lord has put on me to help make that change. So it's nice to be able to hear that it did something powerful, because I knew it was powerful. And I always try to lead when I'm doing things online, like, Lord, put this in front of the right people.
Absolutely. No,
And,
it totally did.
well, that's so good to hear. But yeah, when it comes to like my faith walk, a lot of it has to do with singleness, um, in relationship, because I've been single for over 2 years, and the relationship was just very, very difficult for me to heal from. And I'm still healing. Like, it was just so interesting. Like, even, if I'm gonna be real, like, I'm getting to this point of being so overwhelmed with this growth and, stepping into these new spaces, that it's hard for me to, sometimes do things like this, like being on podcasts, because I really don't have a lot of space, a lot of mental capacity, a lot of energy to pour. And today was one of those days where I was like, how am I going to get on here and pour from an empty cup, because I've been feeling so empty. But like, God is so good to where it's like, I'll fill you up in the moment, and like yesterday was a day where, if I'm gonna just be real, like, I was really struggling with singleness, because,
Mhm.
singleness, like, we have choices that we make. Like, we can sometimes go turn to somebody that we know, somebody that's interested in us, but is it a godsend or not? And like, I battle with that. And yesterday was just one of those days where I was just like, God, I'm going to be obedient. And I feel lonely. I feel isolated. And it's hard. Um, so that's the type of stuff that I put into my artwork. Like, how do I capture these feelings? How do I push through the pain? How do I push through the tears and create? And a lot of times when I'm painting, I'm listening to gospel music. So you're seeing, my healing, my worship through my art. And it's like, I have all these different projects at one time where I have these paintings. Like, I'm just looking around my home right now. Like, I have so much unfinished work that I know is going to be so therapeutic for me and everyone that gets a chance to see it. But that's kind of how it all works together. Like, I struggle, I'm human, but I try so hard to push through the pain.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Girl, you are not alone with the signalness ordeal. Believe that. Child.
It's hard.
Listen, girl, if I can give my own little testimony on that, and it's not resolved. He's always moving and things are always happening. But honestly, I was just talking to my friends this past week, and I was like, you know what? I gotta stop the shenanigans. I'm gonna call them shenanigans that I've been partaking in, with just people that I know are not sent to elevate me, not sent to motivate me, but are meant to keep me in a particular place in my life that I have no business being in anymore. You know what I mean? And I think that when you have aligned yourself with your purpose with Christ, I think that he tells you, like, this is just not the time, or this is just not the person. And so right now, I'm gonna need you to keep walking in your purpose until I tell you that this is now your purpose. Like, do you know what I mean? I think, girl, it is a battle, because at this point, I'm not even grown. I'm but a babe. Because there's this pressure, there's a lot of pressure, particularly, child, I'm Haitian from a Caribbean family. Girl,
Mhm.
they is pressed. They see more pressed than I am most days for all things in my life. but I'm just like, I cannot find it in me. I feel like it's truly not within my spirit anymore to give energy to things that are either not serving me or I have not been called to be subservient to, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So that's a thing. And I think that even on this podcast, what I'm really trying to convey, particularly with this podcast to people, is that there's so much going on. I think that we are all so overwhelmed. And thank you for sharing that, by the way. We
Yeah.
are all so overwhelmed emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. Like I think that saying that, but knowing that there is still a will, if there's a way, there's a will, then it will happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, that's I'm gonna just leave that there.
Yeah.
So I know that we have been talking about faith and we've been talking about having those, you know, surrounding influences in our lives. But given recent events, particularly when it comes to, you know, rioting, when it comes to police brutality, all the things that are COVID, even the pandemic, um, have those things inspired you and affected you in any way and in the way that you create?
Yeah. So, um, I'm literally putting these emotions into my artwork, and with everything that happened with George Floyd, it actually broke my heart, like it broke everyone's, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather, he was actually like so pivotal for me because he was the first Black mayor of Houston, Texas,
Oh, go on.
and he was, the police chief of Atlanta, of New York, the first Black man to get a PhD in criminology. His name is Lee P. Brown, and that's my legacy. And so I called my granddaddy because I'm like, he's the expert. Let me get his thoughts on this. Like when everything was just so wild in the world. So I'm like, I don't know how to even like conceptually find peace about this. And so he helped me realize that there was like cycles and that this is not the first time that something like this has happened. It's just one of the first times that like our generation is truly seeing something in this at this level. But he's seen it before. He's been a leader during that time. And so it really helped me. And so my sister and I, we actually interviewed him. And so if anybody is interested in getting some healing and getting more perspective on what's happening, just feel free to go through my IGTV and you'll see a video that really does a good job, like bringing it all full circle. And it brought me a lot of peace. And so when my grandfather was talking about the cyclical nature, it just clicked in me. And I was like, oh my goodness, like Jesus was the first Black man who was wrongly crucified.
Mm-hmm.
And when everybody's saying, say his name, I'm like, but that's one name that our generation doesn't say. We don't say Jesus. We might be like, oh, God, or God, like, God is good. Or like, there's this whole culture around, you know, um, the universe, right? This new
Yeah.
age movement. But like, what happened to Jesus? And it just clicked to me where it was like, oh my gosh, like Jesus was a Black man, right? But we don't
Mm-hmm.
have that representation and we don't have the way to identify him in our hearts. And so I created a Jesus painting and I call it Prince of Peace. And so that painting was very pivotal for me because one thing that I realized was like, I've been trying to find salvation in the wrong way. So I've been searching for it in men. I've been searching for it in the world. And I didn't fully understand Jesus in my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he was the first one that I know. And I need to say his name. I need to believe it in my heart. And so I just like I started getting new vision and it was just rapid. And that painting helped really change a lot in my life. And so that's why now I can pray these prayers and they have the power because now I'm saying the name Jesus. And Jesus is the thing that makes the prayer more powerful.
Wow. I think that wow, you just hit the nail right on the head there. I agree with you. You know, I was actually having this I'm always having conversations, girl. But I was actually having this conversation where when I was talking about what like microwave Christianity looks like now, or the shift from Christianity to the universe to manifestation instead of prayer and all these things. And it just feels as though we're either doing it in the moment, but not really like I think that we keep faith nowadays on a very superficial level. Like it doesn't go below the water. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that when we are in moments and surrounded by certain people, we're very quick to be like, yep, praise him.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think that when we're in the midst of our own battles, when we're going through these cycles and we're unable to see we forget. Like, I think that we often forget how deep it really is supposed to go, how we're supposed to truly be in relation with him in order to be in relation with self.
Hmm.
Um, and that's incredible. I definitely want to look into that interview with your grandfather. That sounds incredible. But
Yeah.
like, one thing I've been asking myself, because you've said it yourself, that this is cyclical. Like, this is the first time our generation has been affronted with this. And I was saying to a friend of mine that I don't think that this is new necessarily. This kind of suffering is new necessarily to people of color, because I think that throughout history, like, you can just see how that's gone down. But I think that right now, in this age when we're able to videotape everything, see it on social media, that it's the first time that people who are not like us, who do not look like us, who do not experience the same thing, are seeing the things that we've always seen. So I think that we're seeing the world right now through a perspective of color. That's what I've told my friend, right? But as we're seeing these protests, as we're seeing all these things really just fall apart before us and trying to bring it back together, do you think that there is going to be a space for change? Do you think it's actually going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think change is already happening, and change just starts at the heart. The thing is, we're experiencing warfare, spiritual warfare,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
it's coming out in the area of race. But first, it's the spirit. It's who are you submitted to? There are people that are not submitted to the Lord, and there are people that are. And that's what this is all about. And it's just translating in a way that I feel like is almost deceitful to think that the issue starts with color. But the issue starts with spirit and starts with the heart. And then it comes out and is translated in a way that impacts us from a race perspective. And so I believe that change is happening. I believe even something as simple as the prayer that I posted, how that's able to change your heart to where you're now able to connect with people and put your voice out there in a way that glorifies the Lord. That is, if everybody does their part, their faith-based part, then that's how the world changes. And all this stuff that we're experiencing is biblical. Like, it's all biblical. It talks about good seed being planted, but then there's also going to be bad seed. And so they both will grow together. So right now what we're seeing is good seeds and bad seeds growing together, and it's overwhelming. But biblically, the bad seed that grows up as weeds will get cut down and be burned in the fire. So we have to grow together. So for me, that's where that fear is like, why am I afraid when what I read in the Bible is happening? Like, this is biblical. So for me, since I'm on the faith end of the spectrum, I have this unusual level of peacefulness because I know what team I'm on, and that I don't see the big picture because I don't understand. I'm not God. I just know to do my part.
Absolutely. Okay, so I am a woman of my word. I did say I would only take up 30 minutes of your time, but can I ask you a final question?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, so now talking about the business perspective. So clearly this is something that you did that you didn't even know was gonna become this big, and that's just God for you. You be stumbling into things like, I'm gonna go on faith, and he'd be like, bam, here you go.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I mean, how does one, like, what advice would you give to someone trying to make it a business? You started out small and now it's this macro level. You also put out a video recently wherein you were talking about international shipping, and honey, don't I know the struggle in international things.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so how does one go from micro to macro when we're talking business? And is that also, just doing it in faith and taking your time and seeing how it grows? Like, what is your advice for people trying to make those same moves?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally just a matter of time. I wasn't always macro. This macroness, as far as like my business scaling, is all recent as of really like June when I decided to leave my corporate job. Like at the end of May, I told my management that I was going to take a voluntary separation package and leave my company to pursue art full time. And that level of obedience and that faith step that I took was what ignited this next level of growth in my business. So it's so intertwined that it's like, okay, am I going to have faith in these health benefits and this 9 to 5, or am I going to have faith in what God can do? And he showed me immediately once I made the decision. And so but it was calculated. Like, I didn't make a decision that I couldn't stand behind. So sometimes, and this is another thing when we talk about this whole new age movement. I think a lot of us are so confused on what walking by faith looks like and what being a Christian person looks like, what following the Lord looks like, because we're literally looking for signs, but that's not how it works all the time. You know what I mean? Like I think we're
Yes.
expecting, like my coach told me, she's like, you're expecting Jesus to just come down from the heavens and like tell you that you should leave or not. And I'm like, yeah, what's so wrong with that? But what she helped me understand was like, that's not how it works. You have to make a decision and own the decision. And so I realized I had a decision to make. Either I can go after the life that I want for myself, or I cannot. And it was that simple. And I made a decision that was backed by the Lord, and it was blessed in an unusual way. I mean, like, I grew my social media following in a month by 40,000 people. I mean, it was just like, that's probably how you found me, because that
Yep.
viralness, I just put it in God's hands. I was like, look, God, like, I'm gonna do what you told me to do. It's making me uncomfortable, but my prayer is that you blow on it and that you put it in front of the right eyes and the right ears and soften their hearts, and that it's led first by you. And that's what's happened. And so, it's really just do your part and then have faith and build your skill set. Like, faith without works is dead. So you got to put in the work. Like, I'm working all the time on building my brand and building my art to a point where I don't even rest. So I have to, work on how do I find that balance on the back end. But we have to work really hard in order to like build a skill set that people want.
Absolutely. Okay. I know I said that was my last question, and I'm sorry. But last question then. So what advice do you wish you had before you even got all of this started?
I just wish that I would have stopped caring about what other people think of me. And even yesterday, like, I literally did this event. It was like an outdoors event where it was sponsored by Lyft, and we were all like painting these letters. And so my letter was and I get to painting, and I'm like, I literally had no vision for this project, right?
Mhm.
And this is just me being honest, transparent, real life challenges. And I get to paint them. Okay, I'm gonna do like a camo kind of thing because I love camo. That's my vibe or whatever. Cool. And so I get to painting camo. I never painted camo before, but I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm doing a little bit of spray paint, which I'm still very new at learning. And I ended up being so hard on myself because I started looking at what I was doing from the lens of everybody around me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't paint like that. Like, I'm not a street artist. I don't do some of those dope designs with like, it's just like, I don't have like that super abstract view. My art
Mhm.
is like, I'm painting a face with a very simplistic like background or nature. Like, that's just kind of my lane. So I stepped out of my lane, and I actually beat myself up really, really bad. Hence why, like, today I was like, how am I supposed to come pour from an empty cup? Because I had felt so empty off of yesterday. Like, and the way that the enemy will work on me is like, oh, have me negative self-talking based on how I think other people are perceiving what I'm doing. So like, for example, I'm like, oh my gosh, mine is not good. Like, I'm not used to creating work that I'm not confident in. But that happened yesterday. And I'm working through these emotions, but it's one of those things where like, I'm not saying it's just for somebody else. I'm saying this, the things that I say, the things that I put out there are things that first I need to hear. So what I'm saying I need to hear as well is just like, we can't be so hard on ourselves and so critical on ourselves because we feel that we are not good enough, or that we feel that the work that we're producing doesn't match the expectation or the perfectionism that we want it to be. And I have an issue with perfectionism. And when I fall short of it, I am very, very mean to myself. And so I'm trying to work through that to the point of like, okay, God, like, I'm learning, like, sometimes we have to understand like what lanes are our lanes and what lanes are not our lanes. Do we want to play in those other lanes or not? And I'm getting to a point now where I have to learn what lane is mine, and that sometimes deviating from that will do more harm for me than good. And I need to protect my my mental space. And so I just share that story to say that we can't be so worried about what we think other people think of us or what other people do actually think of us. And we have to do our own thing. And so that's kind of like a interesting little like perspective on it. But I just, what I wish I knew is what I always still need to know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm gonna just clap it up right there. No, that's well said. I think that we all struggle with that. And so I think that it's very well said. So that is the end of this interview. For those of you that will be listening, please visit her page, Inspired by Tyler. We are going to be linking it to the YouTube. We're also going to try and connect it via Spotify and definitely through Anchor. Her work is truly, as she said, her gospel just coming to life and her ministry coming to life, her faith coming to life. And I think that particularly in a time such as this, that just seeing radiance, just seeing happiness, seeing peace is something that we just need a daily reminder and a daily dose of. And thank you just so much for coming up here and sharing your wisdom. I truly cannot say thank you enough.
You're welcome.
All right, folks. Well, that was the episode. Thank you for visiting or listening to Esther Alexis, Body of an Extrovert. Definitely feel free to stop by our page, and we will definitely be linking this podcast up there as well so that you can follow it all the way back to Tyler's page. And again, y'all, have a good night. We'll see you the next time.